13 ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13 ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
Happy holidays to you. Hope you're having a great Easter holiday weekend there at home. We appreciate you spending part of your day with us here on the Roundtable program. My name's Jeff Smith. In the next half hour, we're going to spend some time talking to you about one of the fantastic community organizations here in the Toledo area, United North, and the efforts that they have undertaken not only in the last couple of years, but what they see down the road. We're glad to have the CEO of United North with us, the LaGrange Village, as we have all come to know it over the last couple of years. I said to Terry Glazer, actually, Terry, I said to somebody earlier this week, I said, you live around here long enough, you start to almost unintentionally forget history and changes that have happened. So sure. LaGrange Village has adapted. There have been changes, and we'll get to that in just a second. Also with us today is the president of United North, Beth Lewandowski, and also principal of Woodward High School, Emilio Ramirez. All of you, thanks for taking some time.
Our pleasure.
Terry, talk a little bit about what we're seeing from an economic dynamic right now. And we were talking before we came on here today about the money troubles that have been forecasted. The economy is coming out of its, a little bit of a rut over the last couple of years. However, there are forecasts that community organizations, city funds, that kind of thing, that pool's going to start welling up. What's your read on it right now?
Well, it is a concern. One reason LaGrange Development merged with North River Development Corporation, we were both pretty strong organizations, but we saw the handwriting on the wall, and we needed to change the way we did business because funding sources are drying up. Mm-hmm. And it's a great concern, Jeff, because at one time there were 12 community development corporations in the city. Right now we're down to 5 or 6. And why I'm concerned about that is I still think a community development corporation is the best vehicle for helping revitalize our neighborhoods. The city can't do it as a whole. They could participate as a partner, and the private sector as well can help as a partner. But you need a driving force within that neighborhood, run by that neighborhood, to make change.
Is there something, and I pose the question to you as far as your organization and for people at home who are watching this afternoon to understand your main goal, is it to create this kind of outside of Toledo, inside Toledo feel? Do you understand? Does that make sense?
Sure. Actually, what it's trying to do is to take advantage of the assets that the neighborhood has. And a neighborhood like we now call One Village has many assets. You could walk to school, you could walk to a store, you're able to walk to the park, you're able to talk to your neighbors. And so we're designing a neighborhood where there's diversity, where people have an opportunity to live, work, and play. And I think that's what's unique. And we're trying to do this in a very comprehensive way. So you just don't build houses or commercial buildings. You have to look at the schools, you have to look at the parks and community facilities, and you need to help people in terms of increasing their wealth through maybe getting better jobs or financial planning.
Beth, the scenes of blight have been with us for the last couple of years. There's been a lot of effort as far as rebuilding the downtown, trying to bring that back. And as far as the LaGrange Village and One Village and United North and your efforts, what's your read on how it's going? Are we seeing, we keep asking people from an economic standpoint, are we seeing a turn? What do you guys read as far as your area is concerned?
Well, it hasn't been good for the last couple of years, but I do think it's starting to turn around a little bit. I think we're seeing less boarded up houses. Mm-hmm. We're seeing, all of a sudden, we're starting to see some for sale signs on houses that have been sitting there just vacant for a number of years. And as I was driving around last night, I happened to see a sold sign. And I said, well, that's really great. We're seeing a sold sign. That is a great sign. But we've worked very hard in One Village to try to control what's happening as far as blight and crime and everything else. I mean, we're no different than any other part of the city, any other older neighborhood. We're going to have issues and we're going to have concerns, but we've worked very, very hard, and we continue to work very hard to make our neighborhood an ideal place, a quality place for anybody to want to live. We're no longer a white Polish neighborhood. We're a very diverse neighborhood, and that's a great thing that has happened for us.
I'm glad you brought that out. I was just going to touch on the fact everybody still knows that area, down LaGrange Street, is the Polish Village. You still have banners that hang from the street signs that read Polish Village, but there has been a dynamic change as far as the Polish Village as we know it, and you see it in Woodward, yes?
Yes, correct. I mean, the diversity has changed. I don't know if it's for the bad, because we are working together. I know Terry and One Village United North is a combination of not only just the community agencies, but also the schools involved and us working together to improve the neighborhood. I mean, that's our fight.
Terry, it is a constant struggle for organizations like yours to stay financially sound, to make sure your investments and your revenues are all, you know, basically evening out. Right now, and I know there are limited things that we can say about this, but it has come out in the paper in the last couple of weeks talking about a lawsuit that exists with the city of Toledo over One Maritime Plaza, which falls into your neck of the woods.
It does.
Can you just bring people up to speed on exactly what the lawsuit is about, and then we'll go on from there?
Sure, I have to be careful what I say because we are
Pending
in
litigation.
negotiations right now, but it's simply put this way. The city got a federal grant called Urban Development Action Grant, and that money was loaned to the American Maritime offices to build One Maritime Plaza. And the reason the grant was given is because the money would be repaid for an eligible project, and that eligible project would be some improvements to the One Village neighborhood. We were named the beneficiary of those funds.
And this goes back?
This goes back to the early 1980s,
80s, yeah.
So it goes a long way. We haven't received any money, and so that's what the issue is about, is are we entitled to receive that money, and if so, how much should we receive? And if we do receive that money would be reinvested in the neighborhood. We're not looking to take that money and taking a big trip with it. It's being used for a project within the One Village neighborhood.
And we can't talk dollar figures, I know that, but as far as what made the light bulb go off going back 20 plus years to when this thing was first drafted, that you guys are due something?
Well, I wasn't around when the deal was put together, but these urban development action grants, there's a similar situation with a parking garage downtown where these funds were used to help build a parking garage, and then the funds were supposed to be repaid for a neighborhood project. There was a little bit of dispute about that, but eventually it was settled and the money went to the Toledo-Lucas County Housing Fund. These funds are required to be used for certain eligible activities. Building the One Maritime Plaza is not an eligible activity by itself, but the repayment of those funds for a neighborhood project would be, and that's why that project was originally approved.
There was something levied in the article regarding the Bell administration and its focus on downtown projects and kind of ignoring the neighborhoods. Is that the case in your estimate?
Well, I think overall, I don't know that it's just the Bell administration. I mean, in all the administrations I've been through, you know, there are certain interests that seem to get more priority. We've been somewhat successful at forming partnerships and getting neighborhood projects together, one in which that we're building right now, a 40-unit senior housing project on the site of the former Chase School. So we find ways to make things happen, and the city does support us with community development block grant funds. That
Is there bitterness? I mean, you guys are so close to one government center.
Yeah.
Is there bitterness right now along Cherry Street?
Well, you know,
is that the divide?
There is no bitterness. You know, it's funny because I was at a meeting last week in which the mayor spoke, and the mayor said, you know, I'm not angry at you. You know, I know you're fighting for your neighborhood. So I don't think that it's a personal thing. I just think we're here to fight for what our neighborhood thinks it deserves.
Let's talk about some of those efforts that are underway right now, and you brought up the Ohio Theater earlier, and give us an update as far as everybody who knows the history of the area, knows the history of what that was all about, and why is there so much emotion in the Polish Village as we know it to get this thing back up and running?
Well, for one, almost everybody in the city has a story about when they were growing up of being in the Ohio Theater and having their girlfriend next to them or some event in their life that they remember. So there's a lot of history, and in fact the building is on the National Register of Historic Properties. And we've
Do
lost.
you look at, let me ask you
Yes.
this. Obviously, we've seen what happened with the Valentine. I mean,
Right.
is that on par with the kind of project we need to have happen there?
Well, thank heavens it isn't going to cost as much as the
Sure.
Valentine cost. This, as a total project, including building a new building next to it, is a total cost of $7 million. If you subtract the newer building, we're looking about $5.5 million. The Valentine was much more money than that. So we're trying to save a theater. We've lost too many theaters in this city. But even more important than that, it's going to be an economic generator. When the theater reopens, it's going to bring people into the neighborhood. It's going to create new businesses, new jobs, new goods and services for our neighborhood folks. And I'm happy to say that we've raised enough money to do the first phase of renovation, which we're beginning this year, and opening the theater sometime early next year. And there'll be more phases because we weren't able to raise all the money at one time. We've applied for almost $2 million in historic tax credits for future phases. So we're very optimistic that this is going to be a real big deal, not for just the neighborhood, but for the city as a whole.
And you're confident those kind of tax credits will still be available?
Well, the federal tax credits are available. The state tax credits are available, but they're competitive. So we'll see what happens. If we don't get them this round, we'll apply again the next round. So they are out there, they are available.
We keep hearing the word history come up again and again, and I mean, Beth, is that probably the key factor in trying to give the next generation their own experiences with that Ohio Theater?
Oh, I believe so, because you know, ever since I've lived in the neighborhood almost 40 years now, and as Terry mentioned, you can hardly speak to anybody, any place in the city, and they don't have something to tell you about the Ohio Theater. And when I first moved to the neighborhood, and remember my next door neighbor who's now passed away, you know, telling her experiences there. And if you've ever been inside that theater, you can just walk in and see the potential. And I think it's a big boon. I mean, we lose too many of our historic pieces in our more urban settings nowadays, and this is something that needs to be preserved. And you're right, it's for the next generation. That's why we're doing it. We want to have something that our grandchildren can say, well, I remember when I went to the Ohio Theater, just as our grandparents did, and as our parents did, and it's something that needs to be preserved. It's going to take time, but I feel it'll happen. It'll be a great thing for the neighborhood.
You said we've lost too many theaters, and when the plans went together for this, is it to be a movie venue? Is it to be a performance venue, or all the above?
Yes, all the above, and also a community center, because in order for it to be
Similar to what we've seen with the Maumee Theater.
Yes, in some ways, and we always talk about the need for activities for youth, and we talk about basketball or athletic activities, but there's artistic opportunities for youth where they haven't heard about or had the opportunity to hear orchestras or ballet or participate in dance or even put on their own plays.
Let me ask you a question, and as we talked about this relationship with the city, and I know from looking at agendas and looking at city council meetings in the city of Maumee from time to time, there are always those items that come up as far as funding for the Maumee Theater, which is just down the street from their government building or their city building. Is this something that the city is going to have a direct relationship with, or because you've got an organization, a well-defined organization of your own, you guys are going to be responsible for the Ohio Theater?
Well, we're all going to have to be responsible. The city did already find some federal funds, environmental funds, so that we're able to demolish the building next to the theater and do some environmental cleanup of asbestos in the theater. And we did apply for a small amount of community development block grant funds for that first year of operations. But mostly it's going to need to come through us, through marketing the theater, through finding other sources of funds.
And through attendance, obviously.
And through attendance, which we're optimistic that will occur.
When we come back, we are going to talk about the schools in the district, and obviously with Emilio here, principal of Woodward High School, talk about its effect in the community and kind of that chicken or egg relationship to how the community gets better. Is it the schools? Is it the business? And also talk about this plan by the Ohio Department of Education and changing its grading system and how that affects things. We'll be back right after this.